Hi, good morning. This is storytelling tip number 3. Now, it's really important in your stories to create images in people's minds, right? A lot of people make the mistake to think storytelling is about words. Okay, actually storytelling in many cases is about pictures. Let me give you an example. I did a big project for a big presentation for IBM. It was their internal university. They get together every year, they review all their products, and they asked me to come and talk about storytelling. Well, the gentleman before me was a guy called Dan. He was what they call a distinguished engineer. Now, a distinguished engineer in IBM is you can get to the very high levels in the organisation. As an engineer, you don't have anyone reporting to you. Fantastic job, right? Now, Dan was talking about privacy and technology. And he had, you know, sort of slide after slide around essentially all the details. And it was your typical slide presentation. Lots of dot points, lots of graphs, things flying through the air. And there's hundreds of people in the audience and they're watching this presentation, and at the end of his talk, Dan comes off stage. It's about 10 minutes before I have to go and give my talk. And so I go up to Dan and I say to him, yeah, look, fantastic presentation. I noticed that in the middle of your talk you had those 7 key points that, you know, really summarise your point. Do you mind if I sort of use that to illustrate something in my talk? He went, oh, this is fantastic. Yeah, I'd love to see that. So I stand up on stage, and the first thing I do is to say, look, I've just seen Dan's presentation. At the centre of his talk were the 7 key dot points. Okay, now without looking at your notes, hands up if you can tell me 2 of those dot points. I waited, and I waited, nothing. Silence. Anyway, after a little while, a bit more silence, there was that sort of nervous tension. People were taking sneaky peeks at their notepad. And I said, look, that's okay, no problems. Can anyone tell me what Dan said about Hewlett-Packard? Sea of arms just went straight up in the air. They remembered the story that he told about how HP had inappropriately put video cameras in public workplaces. Now, I said, that is the difference between dot points and stories. Now, the thing is, as I recount that little experience that I had, who could actually see the audience in your own mind's eye? Who could see me talking to Dan and asking about whether I had permission to use part of his presentation in my talk? If you can see these things, it means you've got a story which actually has impact. Okay, it's the first test. Can you see your story happening? Often I'll hear people talking about stories and they give these broad brush stories, you know, like big resume stories. I hear this very often where they say, oh, you know, 10 years ago I joined IBM and then I moved on and I had this role, and then after 3 years I moved to another. Do you see, I mean, it's kind of story structured, but do you see any pictures? You don't. And as a result, they're totally forgettable. So, make sure when you're recounting your stories, find moments, okay, very specific moments, because in those moments you can help people see exactly what happened. And that's where you have the engagement, that's where you have the connection. Okay, good luck with your storytelling.